Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah with Midwest Writing Center, and today we have one of the coolest poets I know, Salvatore Marici, will be with us today. We're going to talk about his poetry, his teaching, a little craft talk. It'll be wonderful. Format of the show, it goes interview, updates on the Midwest Writing Center, and free write. Thank you for being here, Sal. I'm super excited to finally have you on the show. It's only been, 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy to be here too. I guess we're waiting for a good time to do it, to plug the reading and the workshop this up. So it's a good time.
Yeah. It's a good time to be in the Quad Cities, right? We're gonna we've got a lot from you coming up. Don't have to be online for it. I guess that's a good segue. Let's just get into that. Tomorrow you're gonna that's tomorrow, right? You're gonna have your ground bag reading?
Yes.
And that will be, let me hold it up. That will be in promotion of Sneezing Coyotes, is that right?
Yeah, well, most of the poems from Sneezing, but of course there'll be some poems from my other three books too in there. I'm really excited about this because this is the time, this is Halloween, and this is fall, and I had never really done a reading about this. This is away from Halloween, so there's going to be a lot of ghosts in the reading. There's going to be a lot of fall stuff in the reading. Halloween. There's going to be a few ghost stories, a few horror stories. Maybe not quite like your typical ghost, but they're going to be in there. And some smells of the kitchen during fall time, the cinnamon smells and the caramelizing sugars on the apples, and so it's going to be good. It's been fun kind of putting this together just one reading, and so that's what I try to do for each reading. Try to do something different. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Really am.
I'm really sad I'm gonna miss it. But I'm really excited about it. Hopefully somebody will record it for me. That's something that I think you do really well in your work, is sort of a combination of the sensory of the present moment, but also like really good recall, really good like adding a little bit of a haunting to things that are everyday. I don't think that's very common, or at least not anymore. And so it's pretty refreshing to see it in your work. So yeah, tomorrow at noon at the Rock Island Public Library, in the community room that's on the second floor. We're gonna have it's a lunch hour event, so we're gonna have it in the community room so we can spread out and be as safe as possible while we have lunch and listen to a beautiful poetry reading from Sal. And then next Saturday, you're going to be teaching a workshop on balancing tension.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your workshop?
Yeah. I was going to cheat and just read off about it, but my little blurb, but I'm just going to talk about it.
I'm going to share it in the chat on the video too, the event.
Yeah. This workshop came from, it's been a side of me for a long time. Maurice Manning, I took a workshop from him once, and I read a poem I worked on it. He goes, "This is perfect. It has tension." And he used tension the whole time. And I was just kind of too embarrassed to ask the workshop, well, what do you mean by this tension? But basically, tension is needed in art and life. We have the yin and yang. If it's a good movie, there's tension in a movie. And if there's nothing that keep grabbing you to pull you into the next line or the next thing, and no discovery, no excitement, what's going to happen here, it's going to be boring. I don't know how to say it, but it's just, the readers won't get through it. I don't care how short of a poem it is, or if they can't get through the first stanza or so, they may read it just because it's open, but they wouldn't care for it. Probably end up losing interest, probably never remember the poem again, or a movie, or a
I
story.
I want to say I appreciate that you talk about balancing tension too. I have I have done plenty of talking about building tension,
Hmm.
which is not the same as balancing tension. And I think it's important to be able to balance tension.
Yeah,
If all you have is rising tensions, you're just raising the stakes and raising the stakes and raising the stakes, and there's no payoff, there's no relief. That's
exactly,
not fun either. That's just sort of torturing your reader.
exactly, exactly. But we need a life too. You go to work, there's tension, and well, let's just say for anything, you have a little deadline, short deadline. There's good tension, good stress, and then there's bad stress. And the good stress for us as artists is to keep the readers, yeah, I want more. I see how that happened, but what about this? What's going to happen there? And keep on moving on. So the workshop, what we'll do is I'll talk somewhat. Um, I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk for 2 hours straight. And what it will do is go over some examples of how do we create tension, some of the craft of it. We'll read some poetry that I believe that has, you know, strong tension and hopefully some obvious tension when you don't have to dig too much into it. And then we write. Then I'll have some prompts, and we'll write, and then we'll share. And it's pretty amazing in all these workshops, that you go to, that you get a room full of people with the same type of energy, maybe a little chaotic, a little, because it's all full artistic energy, but boy, it does work. It passes around the room and gets inside of each other. And I am really amazed at what people write in that short of a time of of these workshops. It's amazing. So I get so much out of it too, so much out of it, teaching and then listening to what people wrote.
I say this a lot to anyone who will listen, but there's something really, it's not even magical. It makes sense. But there's something really special about going to a workshop.
Yeah,
And even if it's not a generative workshop, which this is, right? You will
yeah,
have participants create work right
right.
there. But you end up working harder and longer and more consistently after you go to a workshop. And it's so important. I think that um it's like the one perfect way to clear up a dry spell or writer's block
Yeah,
is
yeah,
engaging, because there's something,
yeah,
in not just the teacher, but in having a community of people near you that gets you excited.
yeah. I took a workshop. I went to the Palm Beach Poetry Festival quite a lot. This is Delray Beach in Florida. They haven't had it for about a couple years, obvious reasons. Um, but I took a workshop by Terrence Hayes, and it was a workshop on form. Okay, yeah, so all these same forms that we all know, but it's a little twist to them. And at the end of the workshop, at the end of the week, he said, "Now you got a lot of good stuff to take home and write, but said, don't expect to be writing like this in the workshop. There's something that's the energy is going to be lost." And so just take home what you've written and continue on with it. Don't get frustrated. Pretty much what he said right at the end. And that's so true. That to me is so true, because listening to your fellow student, um, their questions, and their writings really just triggers off listening to other people responding to what's going on in that room.
If
Yeah,
Yeah, if there's lightning to be caught in a bottle, it's being around other artists,
yeah,
which shouldn't be so hard, right? Like, we know where they are.
yeah, yeah. But I used to work with a bunch of engineers, so that was we won't go there though. That was so we won't go there.
I just I just packed up my poetry and I spent a long time trying to decide if I wanted to pack. I'm moving. I'm not throwing away my poetry.
Okay.
But I spent a long time trying to figure out if I wanted to keep Terrence Hayes out or pack it. Just,
Mhm.
not moving tomorrow. Might want to
Right.
check it. So it's also really good to hear this stuff from someone who's like an expert, that like I get frustrated too. I have a hard time too. This energy will motivate you, but you can't live on the fumes forever. That's
Exactly. Exactly.
always really nice to hear from an instructor.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we all go through some kind of blocks here and there. And for me, I got preoccupied of life, that the mundane, that when I let it overcomes me, really that's about the hardest time for me to write. And I know other people say, oh man, that's the best time to write. But it gets so, how do I say, tunnel minded, tunnel vision. And if you're tunnel vision, nothing really can happen. I don't think so. At least for me. Doesn't mean you don't sit down and try to write when you're like that. You have to, because if you don't, nothing's ever going to happen. And so you have to keep trying with the muse. When the muse knock on the door, I know this is almost a cliche, but you want to be there when the muse knocks on the door. And even when you're having a hard time, and it may not look like you're getting there if it's just like THI or and A EFG. Eventually, you're actually still doing something. You're still working at it, and eventually something will break loose, and then the fun comes.
Yeah, I'm really actually, I haven't heard, I mean, I've heard this, right? You want to be there when the muse shows
Yeah.
up. But not here, not on the show. And I think that's a really found the cats. I think that's a really important thing to remind folks. Like the reason that we work even when we don't want to work is so that when the time comes, we'll be ready.
Right. Yeah.
Now you said you have trouble writing in the mundane moment. And I'm really glad you said that because I'm the same way. And you're right. People are like, no, you need like calm and boring. And that's when you sit down, that's when the work gets done. But I feel very much like almost like I need a sense of urgency or
Mhm.
and of course, I write even when hi, thank you. I write even when when I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
But I can't be like, I know there's some psychology about, why boredom is helpful to the artist, why boredom is helpful to the inventor, the engineer, etc. But man, if I'm bored, it causes only bad things.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
we're always working, right? When we're busy,
Yeah.
there's stuff percolating. There's the world is happening around us. We're noticing things. We're active in life, and that's what becomes art. That's what the artist has that a non-artist doesn't have. Is that everything we do is work.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Everything we do is work, and I consider us artists, poetry, because more like scientists, and uh, and really, I'm a scientist. I my undergraduate was biology and agricultural, and then my major is in agronomy, crops and soils, and a guy that was born and raised in Chicago, never drove a tractor in his life, ended up with a master's in agronomy and retired as an agronomist. Um, but the point, I'm getting off track, but the point is that a scientist is a trained observer, and an artist is also a trained observer. The only thing is, I think an artist that's more free to go in directions of what they observe. And of course, a scientist, you're observing this and trying to figure out why is it doing it. So you got parameters, you got nature, you got physics, you got chemistry. So you got parameters of where you can go with the observation, but yet you still have to observe. And that plays for both artists and scientists. And yeah, so, and that is part of mundane, and if you get bored, a lot of times you could just observe something outside your window or your dust buddies, running, crawling across your floor. And you might get something out of it.
Yep, boredom is sort of a myth. Probably. There's certainly times when we get bored, right? But there's always something to be done. So I'm really, really happy you said that your background is in biology and agronomy, because I know when I've talked to Shi Xuan, that's been a really big hit because her background is in math. And
oh yeah,
we act as though, I don't actually know which is which, but like we act as though we are left or right brained. We are science or art, but I think it's unfair to separate the two as if our lives can be cut into pieces. So I'm really, really thrilled every time I meet a scientist who is an artist, or someone in the hard sciences, which would include math, who is also an artist, because it's throwing in the face of anyone who tries to separate that it's not valid.
Yeah. And something about those math folks are, they're way out there already. Take a calculus class. You'll find out that they're out there. They're already out there. So I believe they see more than we do, or at least in a whole different perspective, and a whole different knowledge that I would say a biologist does and an artist does. But yeah, take a calculus class and you see it's a trip in itself. I took one before and I enjoyed it, but yeah, just placing water, this and that, and these equations there and that, and it all makes sense. If you're lucky, it makes sense. But boy, it takes a lot of zigzagging your mind. That's what you do. You zigzag it around to make it fit.
I have real trouble with math, but I've always, when I get it, I get excited. Because it's a puzzle. You get excited to complete the task, but it's also so obviously a language.
It is.
And what we're gonna separate? You can't, right? You would never say that like French and Mandarin are not similar, even though they're both languages, right? So,
right.
I mean, I obviously don't mean anything about the specifics of the languages, but we would say they're both languages. And then, we try to separate music from math, which music is math. And, painting is a language, right? We don't, I'm getting really philosophical. I'm just excited. I think most of what we do is a form of communication, and to act as though it's not because of some rules someone made up a long time ago is just silly. So back to your previously scheduled programming. I also wanted to thank you for talking more in depth about tension. I think that is a word that falls under the jargon umbrella that we don't think about as much in the arts. And also, I know that you are open to any genre in this workshop, which is exciting to me because I get really insecure around poets. And so opening it up and knowing that, this poet is teaching anyone about this one concept is really, really helpful to me as
Yeah,
someone who
you
gets in.
know, could even make tension of a grocery list, candy bar versus flour, you know. Um, yeah. Also, too, we're also going to see a clips of from the movie North by Northwest, and in this workshop, just to show, just by action and the sound in the movie. At that time, there's no music, and just give a little more showing that there's tension is everywhere. There really is, and I just want to try. What I'm trying to do is make a comparison. Well, this is how they do in film, and I'm not a film expert at all. Believe me, I can tell you what movies I like, but I think North by Northwest, Alfred Hitchcock, um, the scene I might be using is a well-known scene, and so the idea is to get people looking. The idea for that, putting the movie in there, that same movie in there, after we talk about how to create tension, try to get people to say, yeah, this is, I see how Hitchcock did it, and I can see how the writing can do it too. If that it won't, may not make sense now, but it will if you come to the workshop. It definitely will. Um, and 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 it's really interesting to see how people start picking out the tension just in the movie scene, and then they see how also it could work in a poem or a story. A poem, even just spacing, could create a lot of tension in a poem in itself. So, yeah, I taught. This is going to be my third time teaching this workshop, and each time it seems to get better. So, I think this is going to be a charm.
What a beautiful ending for that. Okay, so back to basics. How did you come to poetry?
Well, um, you know, um, I was told by all my teachers, and 90% of my job working at the Snow, which requires a lot of writing. Um, I work as mainly in the natural resources field. Um, this is not answering your question yet, but uh, and I was told I couldn't write. Could not write, and so they always send me to these writing classes, which were just really great classes. And basically it's just basic writing skills. And then when I went back to work after they sent me those classes, the supervisor kept changing everything. Well, one day we had this current affairs in our office, and it was like 15 minutes before lunch, and he pulled everybody into this one room, and there was a blackboard up there, chalkboard, and he said, "We got to stop writing in passive voice." And he handed out this army pamphlet, and it's like how to write. I think that's the name of the pamphlet, from 1955, and it was great, very small, great. But one of the main things he said, that active voice. He said the boy threw the fence, the boy threw the ball over the fence. That's active. The boy did it. The ball was thrown over the fence. That's not active. And we don't know who did the action. It sounds very simple, but the 15 minutes before that one lunch break we had changed everything. All of a sudden, what I was writing is getting passed through my supervisors, and they'll sign off on it. Unless they disagree with something, that's a whole different story. But once he put that criteria, which was a constant, because it was active voice, all of a sudden I became a pretty good writer. Now, besides that, during the whole times of having these problems of writing, or I always did try. And I always, even it's like I always spent hours working on a line or two lines for bureaucracy, which is not good when you're under a time schedule. But um, so after he did that, all of a sudden I could write in other people's fields. Now, like I said, prior to that, I still liked to write, and I wrote stuff. And I think it was about 2000, was it 22 now, 10, I retired. It was about 2003, I believe. I got my first poem published. And the magazine said, it was a web magazine, and it said, submit, we're easy. So I submit. I got published. And, oh, well, that's easy. I submit again. They publish me again. This is great. This is, wow, I'm a great poet. And I submit again, and they rejected me. And I actually felt kind of good about the rejection. And then, because, oh, maybe they'll accept everything. And then I started going to writers groups and start learning. And this is a lot of work, writing. But I was always doing that prior to I got the ego boost from my superiors that you could write. And yeah, so that's how I started, and it's just a continuous learning field. It's just you're learning all the time and trying to go outside your box, another cliche, just a little bit each time, and hopefully you see your voice growing. I think if somebody picks up my very first book, came out in 2012, I think it was, a chapbook. This one here, Mortals, Nature, and Spirits. And then you go up to, just my other books. And I think each book, you can see a different voice that's being changed. And at least I'm hoping, for good or bad, but it's hopefully you see a little more technique, you see a little more in depth. I'm hoping. You may not, that's fine. But so anyway, I know I kind of went off the track on that question, but yeah, it's more work to write than people think. And even though when I was told, I'm summarizing what I just said, even though I was told I couldn't write, but I always felt compelled to for some reason. Yeah.
I'm so happy I asked that. I'm so happy you gave a real answer, like the full answer. That was so beautiful. I love, a lot of the conversations that I have are from people who say they would like to write and think that they don't have the training or education or something. And everyone, language belongs to those who use it. Everyone who wants to can, and can well. And you've given a vote of confidence to that theory.
Thank you. Yeah, I know this one lady. She lives out in Ohio, I think. And I go to a festival once a year, Nature Spirituality Festival, and I teach workshops there. And I try to get her to come to the workshop because, well, I can't write. I go, well, how come? So, well, I remember in school I wrote something, and they said that, boy, this is a pretty good piece, but your grammar is terrible. You don't know grammar. So she stops writing. And the thing is, grammar is probably one of the easiest things, especially if you just do the very basics, is that could be learned. But when she was told by her teachers that, oh, yeah, this is really good, but you got to work on your grammar, and she freaked out. And I can't get her to understand. That's the part you don't worry about. That's the part you learn. That's mechanics. But if they said that you have something good to write about it, and you're going good places with it, that's one of the biggest accomplishments you could get. But she took it wrong. And when I see people like that, it bugs me because it's more than also not just someone that's not going to be writing, but there's some tarnish on ego, self-esteem that those teachers gave her. It's that she's carrying still in her adult life. So, really love to see people like that start writing or doing some kind of artistic thing to prove other people that they were wrong.
I mean, that's heartbreaking, you know.
Yeah.
But we also, the education we get on grammar and the rules of language in secondary education, primary school and secondary school is not much.
Yeah.
It's just not much. I've had conversations with high school English teachers about it, and they don't have the education of an editor, and grammar rules depend on style rules, and that depends on who's publishing or who's reading it. And it doesn't make sense that our high school, junior high, elementary teachers would be well versed in a style guide that, again, depends on where you're coming from to begin with. It doesn't make sense. And if we can't assume that our teachers have that education, we can't assume that our students will. And then it's just kind of cruel to tell someone that their grammar is the reason that they can't do something.
Yeah.
Like it's not the story or the language. It's like you said, it's mechanics.
Yeah, it's mechanics. And you're right, depending who you're writing for too. The grammar style does change. But again, that's mechanics. And your voice will still override the grammar styles.
Always. Well, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
There's probably someone out there doing some real serious work with experimental grammar or something, and we just
I'm sure. I'm sure. But trying to get people to read it though, that might be hard to do. Because they don't know when to stop and go and so forth. Yeah, no periods or anything like that.
That definitely exists. Sure of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. So, but yeah, that's so. And I think you can see, like I said before, probably can see some of that in my work. I know my, well, I guess let's go back to like Elizabeth Bishop. Let's go to her, talking about her, how she got more in depth in her work. If you read her, again, I'm not an expert of her stuff. I read her whole collection, which is not that many one time, and this is I'm stealing from other people. That when she first started writing, they were great poems, and then, but they're really just grounded in one spot, or just we're going about great imagery, everything. But then as she progressed, she was bringing more into it. She was still using the same grounding and the same imagery, but she was bringing more, I don't know, third dimension stuff into it, I guess. I don't know how you call it, but there's a little more layers in there. It may not be as obvious sometimes, but she was incorporating as she wrote more, a little bit more in depth. And that's pretty hard to say, especially when her early stuff was fantastic. But you saw her changing also, and getting a little more, I guess, in depth. I guess I'm sure there's a better term for that to use, but she was throwing more stuff into it. And I think that happens probably to all artists. You have to move around and try different things, but your voice will be there regardless, I think.
am muted. Uh, I fully agree. I think, the more we practice something, the more comfortable we get, the more we can flex our muscles or stretch our muscles or whatever. But I was also thinking, this is just going to be a very specific memory I'm going to pull up, but there was for a little while, maybe they're still doing this, they would put out these box sets for bands that, a few members had died, the band broke up, and some record company or whatever would collect all their old demos and like live recordings from shows in someone's basement, right? And they would put it all out. And I was super, super excited as a teenager when one came out for Nirvana. And I was listening, I was doing it in chronological order. I was so excited. And I like 2 days in, somebody asked me about it, and I was like, there's a reason they got famous when they did and not a moment sooner. And I think that applies, the work that isn't accepted is part of our growth and an important part of it. And just because maybe it's not there yet doesn't mean you're not closer than you were yesterday.
Right. Yeah. And it's also kind of fun, because big Beatles fan, of course I'm 67, what do you expect? Yeah, the Beatles did a lot of that. Well, after they broke up, they had these three, I think they're 3 CD sets. There's 3 of them that came out, and a lot of the demos and everything else.
Oh, the anthology or whatever.
Yeah. And actually, it was, I guess if you're weren't a big Beatles fan, like you're a Nirvana fan, it was interesting.
I'm more into the Beatles than Nirvana.
Oh. That's good. But you see that. You see how how they were influenced. Even at Putnam Library, was about 3 years ago, it was pre-COVID. They had a Beatle display. That's same year where they play the Let It Be album, On Top of the Roof. And they had this like where Paul McCartney got his influence. That was like the old-fashioned melodies. And I didn't know that, but then you could know that still is inside of him. Stuff that he was listening to growing up, and is inside of him. And you can see that in his music, because he's a belt guy, and he likes to get the little melodies, and I'm 64, 64 when I turned 64. I mean, that's a perfect example of the stuff that his parents influenced him when he was growing up. But the fun part is you still can see it, but boy, it's a whole different voice and from the original artist.
Absolutely. Oh, this is so good too, because I don't know, I feel like if you can compare something or break it down, it often, it's just more digestible, and everyone knows the Beatles, right?
Yeah.
I had one of those anthology discs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the only CD I had in my car or something for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear it was 9 out of 14 tracks was Across the Universe.
Yeah.
Never need to hear that song again.
Yeah, they sometimes do a little bit too much though too.
It will haunt my dreams. Sorry. Okay, so you're on your 10th anniversary of your first book.
Actually, yeah. That's true. 2012. And I have to give a plug for the Midwest Writing Center.
Love that.
For getting this book published through Ice Cube Press. When I retired in 2010, and I think a week after I retired, no, the day after I retired, I I became their first resident poet. And so, so I
I
was
didn't
doing
know
some
that. That
readings.
makes me so happy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not done with the story yet. You guys even help me even more. And I always go to when I'm in town, I'll go to the Cowan's writing workshop in June. And there was this guy there that Midwest Writing Center invited, and his name is Steve Simpkins of Ice Cube Press. And um, he saw me, he heard of me because of that, because of the writing center and resident poet. And so we talked a few times the first year he was there, and I did some reading. He liked it when I did when the faculty read and then the students would get to read. He liked how I read. And then the second year he was back again, and he said, "Come to my workshop." I go, "I didn't pay for it. I don't care." He said, "Come to my workshop." And it was about how to submit queries, or at least the one I sat in, to publishers. Well, I was taking a workshop with Stephen French um, at that time. And anyway, Steve gave another free lecture that night at the Writing Center. And afterwards, we went to a bar with him and we had a couple beers. And I had this chapter already written. I was going to go with another publisher, got accepted, but I knew it's not going to be fun. And I'm retired. I'm not going to be making money off of this. Any money I make, I go to for the year. I don't count my gas or anything. I go to a workshop and then boom, everything I make is gone. So it's a hobby. But he said to me, and I showed him some magazines I got published, and he goes, "I'll do your book." I go, "Huh?" People are paying like 35 or 50 bucks or something to do a pitch, a 5-minute pitch during the conference. And I go, "Are you sure?" He goes, "Yeah, but make it short." And so, okay, I have it. He goes, but I went home that night or the next day because it was late. We had a workshop the next day. I actually wrote him a query from his work to show I am really interested, because I go, I don't know what got in it. I don't know what got inside of it, but it took a couple years for it to come out. And like it was for the Writing Center, Collins, and I would not have met Steve, at least not that soon or anything. He published that book, and then 2 weeks later, he said, "I want another book." I go, "Huh?" Because I know you got
Wow.
poetry. Yeah. He said, we sold within 2 weeks. He ran out of books. It was only 75 copies, mind you. It's because he said poetry don't sell, but
Yeah.
75 books came out, and I think people are just being nice at that time. It's only $8.
Nobody buys poetry to be nice.
So he came out and said, I want another book." And I go, "Huh?" He goes, "I know you have the poems." And I had quite a few poems, but it's been a while. I've been writing. So 2 years later, this book came out, Swiss Through and Sniff,
I
which
remember that one.
this is great cover.
I
I'll
love that cover.
tell you about this guy later. It's my hero in life. So that book came out, and then a couple years later, I think it was 2 or 3 years later, then this book came out. And then 3 years later, my other book came out, Sneezy Coyotes.
I have that one.
That's one, yes.
I think I saw you when maybe when Fermentations came out at maybe Iowa City Book Fest, maybe Mission Creek. And I was so upset that I couldn't buy it. I think I was working at
Yep.
the event.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I gotta keep track of Sal.
So, you know, all I have to say that I got to start out with the writing center that really kept me going. Since this is a writing center um, production, I'm going to give one more. I think I should say at least one more thing about how you guys have helped me. And when the writing center was in Davenport, but yeah, they were no Rock Island. Back they were in Rock Island that time, but not at the library. You should have a well, it was the open mic, which later on I facilitated. Well, we still had it. And Susan Collins, I went there and they did it a couple times, and boy, there was really terrible stuff that I read, like Mick Jagger wearing a black leather jacket, something like that, and I'm tough like Mick, I mean, really bad stuff. Yeah, really bad stuff. But there are two things that happened. A guy named John McBride, who was at that time in charge of the Quit City Poets. I figure we're kind of more like a brother-sister group because everybody at Quit City Poets also belongs to this writing center. He said, "Come on and come to our writing group." And I go, "Oh, okay." Invited me, and then I was at the Jewel in Moline and Rock Island, right at the city border. And Susan came in and said, "Come back. We want you to come back to the Out Loud." And that was an encouragement. That was at the time when I was told I couldn't write, and so that's what got me back into it, or kept me into it, I should say. And then, of course, a lot of workshops you had, and I started learning that, hey, I'm not going to be getting my poems published like I thought the very first two times. It's going to be that easy. But that's how but through the workshops and everything, that's how I started getting more into it, writing. So I got to take off my hat to the Midwest Writing Center for doing that for me, which is good. Writing's an important part of my life.
I think I'm supposed to be like gracious and say thank you, but I just feel the same way. I found the writing center when I was a teen, and it changed the trajectory of my life, like just period. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I feel like people probably think that I am just like a really good salesman or something, or like a really well-paid one when I talk about the writing center, but because I was in love with the Midwest Writing Center, I wanted to work here, not the other way around. And I think that's just how it works. I got off track. Shoot, I want to point out that you said you didn't publish at all or you didn't publish any of your books until you retired.
Right.
I think that is very good to make sure people know, because it is really easy to feel like you don't have any time, or like you need to meet some arbitrary deadline that you put in your own head, and you didn't.
Right. When I started writing those poems, I had not even thought that I would have a book out. But I was 57 when my first book came out, and I'm sure over 50, I think, probably, when I got a first poem published. And just from a guy that was told he couldn't write. Also a guy, I do have a speech impediment too, that I was always been dealing with my whole life. And that also is kind of a hindrance, thinking that you get in front of people and do readings and do speeches, which I did when I was working anyway. Uh, so, you know, I, I guess my point is saying is that I guess maybe it's good to have little obstacles to make it more interesting. I know that sounds like an oxymoron. And it's not that I enjoy getting rejections, mind you, and they do come. But I guess it makes it more interesting, a little more. I guess talent, the tension, just trying to get over that one little thing, and next thing you know, you might find another little thing you have to get over. But just I guess the little bumps are actually good.
I have to agree, but I'm sure that someone out there who's in the middle of an obstacle would be unhappy to hear it, but I think it enriches everything.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when I get a rejection, I may not agree with myself at that moment,
Right.
but looking back, I can understand how someone not agreeing um, uh, when something's not going quite right, and you just gotta try. Hopefully, you don't break down and just flow with it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I feel like I get a rejection and I'm like, okay. And it's like sad. And that's just kind of it. I don't really have good advice for like dealing with rejection because it's just like, and like you're
mhm.
bummed.
Yeah,
You still have to, vacuum and make dinner.
yeah.
This is not advice. This is
I got one rejection once. Well, a lot of times from this one magazine, for the Pedestal magazine, and I got one rejection, and then a week later, one of the editors also was editing the magazine Spillway. I don't know if they're still out there now or not. I know
spillway.
Spillway. I don't know. It was, but bottom line was she also was editing that magazine, and she said, "This poem," she goes, "I really tried to get this poem into the Pedestal edition. I couldn't do it, but I want this poem in the upcoming edition Spillway, which will be like 6 months from now." And I said, "Well, let me go talk to my publisher because that poem is going to be in a book that should be out around that time." And Steve came back and goes, "Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. We'll do uh, we'll do that." Um, yeah, I think the poem. Oh, the book was supposed to come out before the magazine. That's why. So we didn't want to pre-publish poem. And then so I went back to Susan. I go, "Okay, we'll do it." And then Steve emailed me back about an hour later. Goes, "No, we want that poem in the book." And so I went back to Susan. He goes, "That's fine. We'll still do the poem." Um, so that's a long story, but sometimes something good comes out of rejection like that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I looked it up. It looks like Spillway had its last publication in 2012, which is interesting because the website is still live.
Is it?
So that's cool.
Yeah. And that magazine was been around for a long time too, I believe. And it was a damn good magazine.
So they had issue 29 came out in, oh, maybe these are just, I'm totally wrong. I've been lying to you. Issue 29 came out in 2021. Issue
Oh,
30 is coming out next year.
oh, okay.
It's just on the side of the website, it says copyright 2012 under an image, and the image
Okay.
is the cover of Spillway 29, but it's the website's copyright,
Does it
not
have
the
the
magazine.
editor's name on it?
Editor's name is Susan Terrace.
Oh,
No, Susan Terrace was editor until
that's the one.
2017. Now it's
Yeah.
Marcia De La O and Phil Taggart.
Okay. That's Susan Terrace is the one that who I was working with on that. And I got good blurb from her too on my book.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's another thing. You gotta be shameless when you start getting these books that and trying to get these blurbs. It's all part of the job, folks.
Well, I have now taken an hour of your time, so I'm going to shift into updates from the Writing Center. I am super, super grateful to have you here. I hope that you'll hang out. You totally don't have to. If you want to give a prompt for our 5-minute free write, let me know. Otherwise, I'll have one after I give these updates. So tomorrow, as we know, Sal will have his brown bag lunch reading at the Rock Island Public Library at noon in the community room. That's on the second floor. That'll be from the book Sneezing Coyotes, which I've held up about 1,000 times. I'm very excited about it. Then on the 13th, that's this Thursday, we will have a special Spectra reading event at Roz Talks. That's in collaboration with the German American Heritage Center and the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa. There's going to be 2 featured readers from the fall residency program over at IWP. Both of whom have German backgrounds, one from China, one from Germany. And there will be a couple of opening readers here locally. All the information on the openers and the event is on our website and on Facebook and on Roz Talks' website. Then on the 15th, we have Writers Studio. That is bright and early with me on Saturday, the first and third Saturday of every month. That's on Zoom, 11 to 1. So not bright, not early, maybe bright, hopefully bright, but not early, 11 to 1 on Zoom. You can drop us a message on any social media or email or sign up for our newsletter to get the link to our Writers Studio. Now, that's an open community workshop group in which we give each other feedback to help make your writing the writing you want it to be. We try to fit your goals, not just give you our opinions, because then you might be writing our writing instead of your own. On next Tuesday, the 18th, I will have poet Skylar Alexander with me on Write More Light in advance of her book release party, which is next Thursday, the 20th, a special Roz Talks Spectra reading series event. That reading will also feature Ryan Collins, Lauren Haldeman, Kaylee Chi Keel, and it will be hosted by Body Haha Burlesque Troupe. So that'll be a unique and really cool experience. Those are all really wonderful readers. I'm not familiar with that particular burlesque troupe, but I'm sure that they're very good at what they do. And then, of course, next Wednesday, got out of order, we'll have another brown bag lunch with Jonathan Turner in promotion for his new book, 100 Things to Do in the Quad Cities Before You Die, which honestly, I intend to pick up. I want to know what I'm missing around here. He'll do a little reading from it. He'll do a signing. I guess we can talk about the Quad Cities. Whew, okay, I think that is what I've got for you. Oh, no, Sal's workshop next Saturday, the 22nd, 10 to noon at the Rock Island Public Library. On balancing tension. Now that is in the community room as well, right? Not at the writing center.
That's what I said. I just hope there's tables there so people could write.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's there are tables. Okay, cool. Now did you have a free write you wanted to give, or is it on me?
Let me what I'm going to do is for the reading. The light here is pretty bad, but I'm going to try it anyway. Come Wednesday, October 12th at 12 p.m. at the Rock Island Library, Public Library. I'm doing this, I'm not even reading this part here. Salvatore Marici and the Midwest Writing Center presents Salvatore Marici's reading at the Brown Bag series. Come and experience a full range of senses while taking a geographical and spiritual journey that spans through space and time. Come, hop on a connected thread that will weave through the surreal with the earthly. And we're going to have a little special emphasis on ghosts, the fall, autumn, how it feels on your skin, the change, and some little horror poems there too. So it was fun putting this together, this list of poems I'll be reading.
That's so exciting. I'm so excited. Um, thank you so much, Sal, for being here. And to everyone else out there, please write more light into your life.
Thank you so much.